Welcome everyone. How are you all doing? Just turn the waiting room off here.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday.
Happy
How are we doing?
Friday.
So we will do the thing that we do every time. Obviously, we've got that awkward few minutes where if we start now, then a few people will join and we have to start again and again and again. So I'm going to pick on anyone who has got their camera on, and just try and understand who hasn't got a mouthful of food, and ask why you're here. So, Dan Hamilton, could you just give me an idea, like maybe 30 seconds or less? What's brought you here today? What's on your mind? What you're hoping we're going to discuss here?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a contract tech lead, occasional CTO, and I work with a few different teams at various levels of AI maturity, shall we say. Some big corporates with lots of rules, some more scale-up-y stuff where there's a lot of autonomy. So I'm interested in hearing other people's experiences of introducing AI into different environments, stuff like guardrails, dealing with stakeholders and external security teams. That's the stuff which would be absolute nuggets for me. And likewise, happy to share what little nuggets I've gleaned thus far on my journey.
Gotcha. Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. Mark, twice in a week. How are you doing? How about yourself?
Yeah, good, thanks. Sorry, different Mark. Which Mark did you mean?
Sorry. Yeah, Mark, you were the talking in the red shirt.
Okay, it's like sitting in the front row of a comedy show, right? You
Right.
risk getting picked on. So I've been a SaaS startup CTO for over 10 years. Investor as well, a couple of exits. I'm super passionate about learning about the things I don't know, always aiming for the bleeding edge of impact delivery through software. I think AI is a bit of a game changer, but it's wildly overhyped. I'm always interested to hear from other people in industry, like what's working, what's not, what have they tried, that kind of thing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. And just while the numbers are still going up to 33 now, Amish Rahan, you'd be happy to share, again, 30 seconds or less, what's brought you here today?
Sure. Hi guys, good to see you all. So yeah, I guess I've recently started my startup journey, and hiring is one of those things that you can never get right, however big or small you are. Um, and I want to obsess over the kind of team we build from ground up, especially in the age of AI world where you have so many co-pilots to work with. How do you figure what are the right skill sets you want to hire for, and how do you also validate for that skill sets? Today, if we are hiring a founding engineer, knowing what are the soft skills and the hard skills we are looking for in that individual is key. And I'm looking forward to hearing other people's experiences and how they evaluate new age candidates for the early stage startup roles.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Nick, all sound good with that? What we're expecting then?
Brilliant. Yeah, I guess there's, you could probably talk for hours, if not days, about AI. You could go very technical. We could focus on the hiring. I think today's session in particular will focus a bit more on building a team rather than like specific tools, and especially what's changed in the last 6 to 12 months, because you all know very well this thing is moving fast, and whatever worked 6 months ago might not work today. So we'll cover the agenda in a minute, but yeah, this is going to be a bit more focused on building teams, being your, very first founding team, or maybe slightly larger team, or how existing teams should and are adapting to the change.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nick. Okay, well, look, we've got about 40 people there, so I'll do a very quick intro then, and then Nick, I'll get out your way. Just a quick show of hands with the cameras on. Anyone here for the first time at a London CTOs Lunch Club event?
Welcome.
Okay, a bunch. That's good. Okay. So for those that that are here for the first time, then my name is Barry Cranford. I'm the organizer of the London CTOs. So we run this every Friday lunchtime. We have a different host every time, usually a CTO. So if anybody is interested in getting involved, then please do talk to us, and we're more than happy for you to host a session. It's generally run through what you want to talk about, right? So something, either something you're curious about, something you want to present on. You can have a full-blown presentation. You can have a series of just short discussions, or you can literally come with a question and talk about it there and then. It came off the back of the unconferences that we run every quarter, which are great fun. We've got loads of topics get put up there, but we never have enough time to cover all of them. So if you fancy giving a go, then please do. Nick, I'll get out of your way at this point. Best of luck. Enjoy, everyone. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you everyone for joining. We're up to 43 people. There's a lot of pressure. Some familiar faces in the audience as well. So, a few housekeeping rules. Please switch off your mobile. No, I'm joking. You can do whatever you want with your mobile. Just please stay on mute unless you have a question or you're talking, just to avoid background noise and all that. If at any point you'd like to speak or ask a question, either unmute yourself and just ask the question, raise your hand, or use the chat as well. I'm very aware this topic can be polarizing. So some people may have very strong views. So please, let's just keep it polite and professional. So this session is for, first of all, CTOs at any stage. It's a CTO lunch club, so no surprise there. Founders who are building the first team or a team or any team, and just whoever is curious. So we'll have some dedicated Q&A time at the end, but we'll also have time for questions and just comments all throughout the presentation. So let's move on. Who am I and why should you listen to me? Well, that's a very good question. Bit of background about me. I've been in tech for 20 years now, last 10 years exclusively in startups. For some reason, I seem to enjoy startups more than big companies. I've been basically a founding member twice. I went through a startup accelerator as well, and I was a CTO at my previous startup, which was an insurtech startup in London. So now I'm helping more founders build the SaaS business. Agenda for today. I'm aware I'm usually very ambitious with all the stuff that I tend to cram into the agenda. So let's just hope we don't overrun. Again, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of comments, a lot of ideas in here. So again, AI native tech teams. What does that even mean? How do you hire in the age of AI? What's changing? How do you scale without growing headcount? That seems to be a theme now, lean and more efficient. How do you interview? How do you assess for this new era? And obviously Q&A and open forum at the end. So let's get started. What does an AA native team actually look like? So you're probably all aware of the big shift that we are seeing in the markets. There's been a lot of layoffs from big corps. There's all the companies that are hiring now seems to require very specific skill sets. There's a demand to do a lot more with a lot less people in this case. I've noticed, and again, just to be clear, my background is predominantly in startups, so you may have a different view if your background is with slightly larger organizations, and that's what we're here to discuss today. But there seems to be I notice an increasing gap between larger companies and startups. Startups are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They're all looking for 1, 2, 3 people as their founding team who can do whatever we used to do with a team of 10 in the past. T-shaped full stack product engineers seems to be a theme now. The expectation seems to be for engineers to really own the end-to-end process today, rather than just focusing on perhaps back-end, front-end, QA, and product. Based on what I see and hear, things don't seem to be changing as dramatically or as quickly in bigger and more mature companies. So I'm very curious to hear your view. If anyone here works or runs a slightly bigger companies. What is your view? Feel free to use the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. Anyone want to go first? First of all, who in here works with bigger companies, not exclusively startups? Okay, few hands up. What are you seeing on your side? Obviously, bigger companies, they already have a team in place. They've been operating for a number of years. What's the kind of recurring theme there? Are you witnessing a kind of pressure to downsize, to change things, to just adopt more AI tools, to be more efficient? What's happening on your side? Who would like to talk about this? I'm not sure anyone's speaking, but I'm not hearing anything. There's a
Mel's
hand
got
up.
his
Mel,
hand
yeah,
up, yeah.
Mel.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm not really sure how to do this, so I just put my hand up. Yeah, I completely agree, actually, Nick, with your assessment. I have spent quite a bit of my career working in bigger companies. I'm currently working at Gumtree, and we have an engineering team there of over 100. And I'm surprised at how little take up there is of AI coding tools, of AI as a kind of factor of change. It's really not impacted very much at all. People
Interesting.
are using it in part in places, and I've also seen this in other larger companies that I have some connection with. But I completely agree with what you're saying in terms of how it's changing the game for startups. And this kind of idea of like having a company that just has one engineer seems to be quite, the dream for a lot of VCs. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting split, and I agree with your assessment. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, man. If you ask me, 2 years ago, how to build a team, I would have probably said, oh, yes, we need a product manager, we need 2 backend engineers and a front-end engineer, maybe a QA as well. So a minimum of 5, 6. Yes, obviously, funding plays a big role in this, but there seems to be a big shift. And especially, I'm noticing that especially in startups with like very super lean teams where 2 individuals can really just move mountains now and take over the whole process, almost like end to end, from talking to a customer to deploying in production and doing almost like customer support as well. I know there's at least a few startup people in here, and especially someone who is in the process of hiring now. What are you witnessing? What are you seeing? Anyone want to? We got a comment in the chat from Angelos. I'm very new in my role, but the only AI we are using so far is GitHub Copilot. Are you part of a big team, big dev team, big company, or startup, Angelos?
Can you hear me okay? I'm just trying to set up my
I can see you now. I've got a lot of people here in the chat, so I'm not sure I'm seeing everyone, but I can hear you now. So
okay, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, my team is about 70 engineers.
Right, so on the big side, yeah.
Yes. I mean, the main hesitation, to be honest, in adopting AI more widely is compliance. Lots of sensitive data, and someone has to come in and take that initiative on to do it. So it's just slow. Things are moving, but it's a lot slower. Lots of.
Do you feel like you're, not just for you, Angelos, but like for everyone here, do you feel like you're under pressure to deliver AI, whatever that means, or make your team more efficient with using AI, or use AI more? It seems to be a theme now. We've seen it in the news. Not hiring new engineers until you prove it can be done with AI and all that stuff here. Again, that's in the news, so I don't know how real that is in like real companies like yours.
I think it depends whether you're using AI bottom up or top down. So some of the companies I work with, the mandate comes from the board or comes from the investors and then down via the CEO. And other companies, it comes from the individual teams up from the bottom. where teams are adopting it and they don't really care whether they have permission or not. I think that makes a huge difference on what happens next.
Yeah, I think the first way when it's kind of top down, that's a bit problematic and it feels a bit forced. But also, yeah, compliance can be a big thing, and I hear it all the time. There's a bit of concern for, privacy, especially for certain industries as well. Whereas probably startups are a bit more kind of fast and loose in a way, so they don't have so many constraints. But also the constraints they have is, budget constraints. So they have all the interest to kind of make things work with less people, I guess. Okay.
I think there's also a big thing of I see two different types of company. The companies that are saying AI is a reason to reduce your headcount, and generally they're lying. And almost all the cases I know of personally that I've investigated, it's always been a lie. It's something else they need to save money on, or they overspent, or they're failing a funding round, or their customer renewals have dropped in 2024. And then they're using AI as the blame to hide and to cover up. Because the other type is engineers make you money, products make you money. So if you can get more done per engineer with AI, they make you more money per person. So the reaction has been, we have to hire more people. Our existing people are more profitable. So new people would also be more profitable. So let's hire more people. And I don't really see much in between. There's the groups that are using AI as an excuse to cut costs, and they're trying to fire as many people as possible and wave their hands and say, well, AI will save us money. And then there's the groups that are saying, well, no, AI is useful. Therefore, let's hire as many people as we can possibly do because we just make more money from it.
Mark, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to very strongly +1 Adam on that. There's a very simple dichotomy. Bigger companies are mostly in the business of value creation, which is what VCs and PE firms would, how they would term it. So you've got this dichotomy between value creation and cost cutting and efficiency, and you can't cost cut or efficientize, if that's a word, your way to growth. The only way to get to growth is through value creation, and AI may or may not help you to create value. It really depends on your business model. So I think that's also another key element in this kind of division, if you like, if you want to put it that way, between the bigger outfits and the smaller outfits. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
It does. Yeah, thank you, Mal. Let's have a look at the chat. So I found my team, 55 engineers, had sourced their own AI tooling. We standardized to GitHub Copilot, and we bring pilots of other development tools to assist developers. We measured improvements in quality, but not a measurable increase in velocity. I'm not sure I want to get into this, but yeah, there's a lot of talking about where AI can make the biggest difference, and especially, greenfield projects versus existing big projects. We might cover that later. Piotr, I'm in fintech and we're looking to implement more AI for development. Some ideas about using AI as tool outside of development as well. Yeah, that's absolutely a theme. It's not just development, it's kind of the whole process, really. Relatively small SaaS here, team of 15, good level of adoption on our side. Above half have started using Cursor. It doesn't do that well with complex tasks in complex code bases, although I've noticed it's getting a lot better. Anyway, let's move away from specific tools and let's have a look at what we have next. So, the product engineer, this new concept, which is not really new, to be honest. I've heard people commenting, well, that's the way it should have always been, but for some reason now it's becoming more popular. Again, there's a theme here of developers, well, product managers almost kind of disappearing and being deemed not necessary anymore. Again, this is controversial. And then engineering really stepping into product, stepping into potentially QA as well, talking to the customer and all that. Again, is that realistic? Is that too much for a single person, do you reckon? Or is that really the way it should have always been for engineers? Anyone want to pick this up?
Well, I mean, if you're going to go with that question, I'm going to go with the counter question of, does anyone need engineers? Don't you just want a product manager who knows how to use Cursor?
Well, that is a good question. I'm not going to answer that.
I can try and
Would
answer
anyone
that.
want to answer that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I am
Go
a
on,
software
Melis.
engineer. I think Adam, you would struggle with someone who can just prompt without any understanding what is actually going on and the sort of architecture of your application, even if it's small enough. I think you need someone who can assess the requirements and then use whatever tool you named as a leverage to ship quicker, but there still needs to be understanding what is going on. You can't just allow it to do the whole thing, I don't think.
Can I
If
propose
you
a
allow me,
different
Nick, to
question?
comment on this as well, Felipe here. I think there are twofold in here. The first one is you probably want to start to hire product managers that can do that, because you want them to be able to speed up and be more free to be able to think about what they can achieve from a POC perspective. Not to go all the way, because I completely agree with Dennis. If you use any of the cursors or any of this vibe coding kind of tools, you end up in brick walls very quickly, and when you start to become complex systems. We're not there yet, but again, this is the worst part that we are. So the things are just going to get it better and better. But on the other side, you need to start to train people, I think, especially the engineers, on how to leverage that better to speed up their version of their coding and not fight against it. And I think that's the thing for me is how can we augment people? How can we improve their ability to be able to deliver faster? And not from a perspective, at least I'm not looking from a perspective of like just deliver faster. It's more about deliver faster this mundane thing and focus on problem solving and things about adding value to the business and adding value to the product. That's more interesting than trying to spend hours and hours and hours debugging something that could have been much easier if you had some AI to help you there.
So are you proposing a bigger overlap between product people and engineering people? Product becoming almost technical and using these tools to produce POCs, but then the engineering people becoming a lot more product focused. So there's a lot more overlap in there. And obviously they can take over the POC and make it into something robust. But I think what I'm seeing more and more is, or what the expectation I'm seeing more and more is for engineers to be a lot more product. Whereas a couple of years ago, that was rarely a requirement. Maybe it was implicit, but it wasn't in the job specs.
I think it's very, I don't know, at least on my word, is very much scale ups and startups. So this is already a reality. At least the companies that I've been working with, engineers can't be just on the back, just waiting for someone to tell them what to do. They are highly involved with the product management, and I believe that they are morphing together, but they're still very distinct in terms of what they deliver and what they can add value to. And again, I see as a duo or trio with even a kind of UI UX person that is very good at that, and they all three utilizing AI in different ways to be able to deliver again more value and stopping with the tasks that are just useless.
Good point. Very good point. Thanks.
Maybe I'm going to say something.
There was a hand up, Amish.
Yeah, maybe I'm going to say something controversial as well. And I know, like,
why not? We're talking about AI, so that's what we're here for.
Right. I know Adam mentioned that we should start giving cursor to product managers or like product engineers, and I think I'm more in the boat where, as you mentioned, Nick, the engineers should start becoming a little more product focused, right, rather than vice versa. And the reason I say is that product managers is a very new concept that came in the last 10 to 12 years, right? Or maybe 15. The idea is that it was a role that was created because the two sides of the business and the technology teams were not able to communicate better. I guess with the kind of tools that we're using these days, if you don't use it properly, you can start creating tech debt very quickly. Right. In a couple of years, we are going to be at a place where the engineers are then asked to go and clean up code and make sure that it's bug free and like you're maintaining smaller modular codes and whatnot. So
Refactoring AI code. Yes, that's going to
exactly
be
right.
a thing.
I rather imagine that the concept of a product manager is going to like go away, and you're going to reach and go back to the world where there was just business and engineering teams, and engineering teams are going to be wearing multiple hats, such as that of the QA team or product engineers, while they are empowered with these new AI first tools.
So here's the question I wanted to ask. Again, maybe controversial, but is that realistic to expect every engineer to be able to step into product so heavily?
No, but I think this isn't necessarily a new problem. I think a large problem is about leadership and understanding what's actually really important. If you've got really good OKRs and it's make this number go up, whether it's successful checkouts or reduce AWS spend, you know, engineers love that stuff, but somebody's got to be able to articulate that in the startup, whether that's a CEO who's completely in tune with what the market really needs or knows what tests they want to run. As you get into bigger and bigger companies, it gets much more difficult.
Here's another question. Sorry, someone was speaking. I didn't want to interrupt. There's also a hand up from Adam as well. Who was saying something?
I'll jump in.
Adam, feel free to unmute and jump in. Yeah.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
I can at least. Yeah.
So the whole sort of product manager versus project manager and product owner thing, I like the point about how product owners haven't been a thing for very long at all. They didn't exist when I started. I think the trend has been not product is a funny word. I think it's more about paying attention to the underlying customer problems or the underlying problem you're there for. That's been the direction of change. It always makes me laugh when people say they're a product company, and what they really mean is they blame the product managers for everything. But it's actually a product company should be focused on the underlying problem. And I think it's reasonable to expect engineers to focus on underlying problems, because that's the difference between an engineer and a mechanic. So it's like, I think that it is reasonable to get them to focus on that. And I think product work is like a byproduct of that. Is how I sort of think about it.
I guess what you're saying is it should have always been the case, right? We shouldn't even be debating that. A good engineer should be able to do that and solve an actual
why
problem rather than
way,
getting a job spec. And I guess there could be a difference in larger teams. Maybe they need dedicated product capacity. Maybe smaller teams can deal with 2 people doing all that.
Yeah, it's a full-time job trying to actually like represent the customer's needs. You've got to talk to a lot of customers, right? So I think that I've always found it amusing that you have product owners that basically are like doing admin and they don't speak to customers. That's a very strange role to have. And those people are like developers who don't code. So I can see the attraction in getting them to code, but it feels like a step in the wrong direction,
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of debate going on in the chat, and I'm really struggling to keep up now. I'm just about to throw my slides out the window because I think we covered 2 slides and we have 6 more. So I'm not sure what's going to happen here. I think we're just gonna move on to the next slide. Oh no, there's a hand up. Adam.
Sorry, no, I kept it on.
Okay. Yeah, I have
Apologies.
no idea how to put it down. I don't even know how to raise my hand. So what we're talking about is, well, job specs, but like more broadly, what kind of skill set is being required and whether or how that is now changing or has changed in the last few months. My experience, most of the job specs that I see out there, they still talk predominantly about programming languages and frameworks and specific competencies. Some companies, especially startups, like AI startups, some companies that are building AI things, they require specific, competency in building, I don't know, AI agents, infrastructure, and all that. Based on what I've seen, not many seem to explicitly require experience with AI tools. So, Cursor, Windsurfer, these kind of things. So my question for you is that, have you seen something different? Are the requirements when people are hiring also changing? Or is that even necessary to require knowledge in specific tools? George, your hand's up. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I can speak from personal experience here, where I just started a role as a founding engineer in .NET and C#, and I've never written C#. I've never worked in .NET, but I'm using Cursor extensively. And I think I don't know, a few years ago, hiring someone that had no experience in like a completely different tech stack would be a risk, and it feels less of a risk now than it did do. We're hiring more engineers. The difference, I think, is I think the code, the language is less important, but like the platform maybe is, in terms of I'm a backend engineer, I can do mobile apps, but I'm not great at them. We're now looking for a React Native developer, but really what we want is someone with mobile experience, because it's just a different thing to consider.
Yeah.
Really
So can I
constrain resources? So yeah, I think the main thing for me is language is less relevant than it was, because I don't really write. I'm writing a lot less syntax than I used to, but there are still experience in solving problems, which is the real value in terms of like scaling or working, with mobile devices or whatever it is. But I haven't seen like jobs, like job ads, like catch up with that, I suppose. And that I see lots of ads for like must know 10 years of Python. But I think it will change.
So you said you're hiring now, or you will soon be hiring. What will your job spec look like? Or if you want a different question, you've been interviewing recently, where you asked about AI tools specifically, or like, did you have like a technical round where you kind of showed that, oh, I don't really know .NET, but look what I can do, even though, it's not my primary language.
Part of our interview was like AI tool proficiency. So we do a pairing exercise where you have to solve a sort of bug without looking at the code base, just using a chat interface.
And that's interesting. That I love that.
Yeah, the bug is designed so that you can't just prompt the AI to fix it, because it's generated some bad code based on the like the naming of something. Annoyingly, like the latest versions, like Claude 4, actually fixes it now, but it didn't before. So we've had to rethink it. Yeah, I think
that's a nice exercise, though. Yeah, I love that. That's exactly the spirit, right? That's what you want to, as a personal opinion. Chris, your hand's up. Feel free to unmute yourself. I know you have something to say.
Yeah, loving this conversation. Really, really cool. I think I'd love to kind of just talk to the mobile engineer versus hiring a React Native engineer point. I think that's absolutely true, but I think also we can take it one further than that and help developers with a basic grounding learn whole paradigms that they weren't used to before. So for me, I've taken on a mobile code base recently, and I know a bit about mobile, but not very much. And I immediately thought, well, I need to know more about mobile because I don't know what I don't know. So I don't know what to ask the LLM. But then I'm learning to think sort of a bit more of a meta about that, and say to the LLM, I am an engineer with this experience, maybe even here's my LinkedIn. Tell me what I should know about mobile that may not be obvious, if you see what I mean. Because
that's interesting.
Because then you're almost allowing it to help you to fill in the gaps in your own learning about a new paradigm, which I think is something, this kind of meta thinking, it's almost meta thinking about how to ask LLMs for help, I think is not common yet. I think people are still very much at the stage of help me write an email, rather than help me to think differently. So I think I get totally what you're saying. I think it's a good approach, and I think you're right that we can we don't have to be language specific, but I think the ability for us to acquire a breadth of skills that we otherwise didn't have, as long as we have an overall affinity for them and are keen to learn them, I think there are many less limits about what we are able now to learn, which is really interesting and exciting.
There's another hand up, Ricardo. You want to jump in? Actually, there's probably more than one. So
I'm happy to wait. I don't mind.
No, actually, you go first. I saw a hand, but I'm struggling to see everyone in here because there's just too many people in this conversation. Anyway, you go first. Yeah.
No worries, thank you. Great talk so far. I think it's been absolutely fascinating. There's something at the back of my head which I just can't help shake, which is around this question of efficiency. Because one of the things that I've sort of taken from my career is around the fact that it's always going to be one thing that one person in the corner of the internet might know about a particular tech stack or a particular technology or a particular whatever. And it takes a deep degree of nuance maybe to find that issue. And I constantly get the feeling with the AI tooling that it's really down to chance. I don't believe that the AI really knows about that, but I could be wrong, and that may well change down the line. The question I have is, has anyone actually used AI for something which is designed for hyper efficiency? I'm thinking things like Rust, where even humans have a hard time understanding it, and it's really based around high speed, high performance, low memory usage, that sort of thing. Have they noticed any kind of trade-off when it comes to using AI for tools specifically designed for high efficiency?
Does anyone have a take on that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go on.
So I was going to say this is actually something I looked at recently for a short blog post, and there are some benchmarks out there that compare current LLMs versus solving problems in different languages, and what you tend to see are that the languages that perform better are the ones that historically have been used more commonly for open source work, because there's more examples for them to pull from. Languages like Rust and Go don't perform as well because of that. Not only are they more recent, but there's less examples, and like you say, there are additional challenges in those kind of languages. What I found though is it just appears to be a shifting thing. Over time, once there's more examples, I expect them to catch up.
So does that necessarily not preclude the? Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say. So does that? So and I mean that sounds sensible to me, that there needs to be a critical mass of pre-existing examples for any LLM to learn from stuff like that.
Yeah.
So is that suggesting that perhaps this is essentially putting a time limit on the usefulness of human experience with certain languages? If there's a large, I mean, if you invented a language tomorrow, no LLM would really know how to do it unless the documentation was perfect or really highly up to date. So there might be maybe 5 years of good examples, or a chance for humans to create examples, and then all of a sudden, bam, LLM takes over,
It's a tough question. I think, like other people have observed, when you get to a certain level of complexity with any language, you run into walls at the moment. That's certainly what we've seen. So I imagine it's going to be more a case of the current disparity in the ability for LLMs to solve problems in different languages. That gap will close over time. For languages like PHP, Python, C#, that's probably as good as they're going to get without some kind of underlying model change.
I can easily see the worst part. So I will stop talking after this, but I can easily see one of the worst side effects of that could potentially be a hyper increase in the churn of new frameworks appearing and disappearing, just so that people can stay employed. But anyway, that's a different question.
So we're getting very technical very quickly. So I'm gonna kind of swing the conversation back into less technical topics. Well, it's still relatively technical. However, the next big question is, writing code used to be the bottleneck, right? Just typing on the keyboard. So if this is now no longer the bottleneck because you can get AI to generate a lot of code for you, where is the next bottleneck? What kind of skills do we need? What needs to change in the logic? Rather than just looking for very good developers who can just churn out code as fast as they can, what are we now looking for? Would anyone like to take that one? There's some hands up, but I feel like they were raised probably a couple of minutes ago. So feel free to just unmute yourself.
I can take this one from the developer perspective. I think as we improve the models and everything, there still are some limitations on the ability of these things to understand context. So to be able to explain the context to the model, you need to be technical enough to say, look, we're not only looking to build this, but it needs to function in this way with these edge cases and another 10 or 20 parameters just to get something meaningful out of the model. Otherwise, it just wouldn't produce what you want of the quality you're looking for. I was actually playing yesterday with the model, with Cursor, and I gave it a general inquiry of what I want to build. And I was constantly
out of
querying.
curiosity, what kind of input did you provide?
Okay, so I provided input to say that I need a visual representation on a web page, which would work on mobile, tablet, basically any screen size, be responsive, needed to be accessible. We need accessibility for this. And I simply described in like human language that I'm looking for a visual representation of connections between medical professionals. So for example, there is one who was working on some sort of papers with another person, and maybe someone else has joined them later on to work on the same project. And so the task was to, let's say, have a person which would visually be connected with like lines, chart type of thing with other people who've been involved. And then it didn't really work. It just produced a mesh of dots connected somehow randomly, and it didn't follow the desired route, even though the file containing the data set was provided. And it was still struggling to understand, to comprehend the whole complexity of this thing. So like someone mentioned, someone mentioned in the chat that, for simple things like completion of a, I don't know, fetch function is fine. It works. You don't have to type it all out. It does it for you, and it helps. It helps you with time to deliver quicker. But you can't just prompt it with, I don't know, 10 sentences and hope for another unicorn startup idea to be implemented.
So I guess to rephrase what you just said, you don't need to be able to type lightning fast, but you need all the technical expertise that you've kind of matured over 10, 20 years of your career to tell the LLM exactly how you want things to be built. Ricardo, your hand's up. Feel free to unmute yourself.
I suspect the next relevant bottleneck is probably going to be compliance and governance. So the day that someone has to get sued, who they're going to blame, the company, the developer, or ChatGPT. Right now, it's a bit ambiguous. And generally, if there's more money involved, then they will put barriers in place, much like they did with GDPR. That's my feeling anyway.
When you say barriers, does that mean in your mind just like banning all the AI tools completely and just like,
I don't mean banning, but there will be some sort of lines drawn up as to, right, if you use ChatGPT, then you are responsible for what it generates, regardless of, who the AI you're using is. As an example, the minute that comes into place, the game changes, the story shifts.
That's already in place, though, is it not? Legal liabilities with the company who puts whatever out into the world. You can't mitigate or pass that on to somebody else. You might be able to sue somebody, but the company.
I'm not saying I know how it's going to happen. I'm just saying, as an example, right now the question is still open. At least that's what a lot of companies will say. Oh, it wasn't us, it was the AI. And until there's some sort of legal precedent or some kind of example that is worked through the court system, I suspect that a lot of people will be a little bit cavalier with it and maybe not as careful as they might want. Perhaps they should be. That's my feeling anyway.
And by the way, liability is always on the company. Like if you use ChatGPT to produce code, then the liability is still on you, not on ChatGPT, right? But yeah, compliance is a big problem right now. So who else is navigating that?
Yes, I think the only way you'd be able to kind of
to do this would be to attempt to countersue a foundation model provider for some kind of problem, which I cannot believe that you're going to get anywhere with that at all.
Yeah.
So I feel like
Yeah.
there has to be an assumption that with any organization that uses LLM tools that they have the liability, and therefore they must ensure that their developers understand, not necessarily to pass that on to them, but to help them understand that they are responsible for the code that they are producing using the AI, and that nobody else is. It's on them.
Exactly.
What's more interesting is when you get to standalone coding agents that are going in and interacting directly with GitHub and starting to produce PRs. Then who is responsible? It's not the code. Is it the reviewer? Is it the coder? Is it the CTO? That's quite interesting, and I think a much more interesting kind of legal situation. I don't think it's Copilot's fault though, but it's gonna come down probably to us at the end of the day.
Yeah.
There are a lot of, there does seem to be a bit of a cavalier attitude at the moment, and it's a bit like the Wild West, isn't it? Like in the bad old days before we had any sort of form of control. But at the end of the day, the audit of your code and your compliance, it's down to the organization. You can't say, oh, it's ChatGPT's fault. And if your compliance, your certification requires a certain audit trail, you can't just cross it out instead of putting what you've done. Just say we use ChatGPT. I think you'd be, in a lot of the industries I've been working in, you'd be laughed out of the room.
There's some more hands up. Feel free to unmute yourselves.
Can maybe jump in. So hi from Germany. So I think I'm seeing the question, and I think it's maybe controversial for me, because writing the code fast was never the main bottleneck from my perspective. It was understanding what to build was. So AI can now generate the code very fast, but it can't actually figure out yet if you're solving the right problem, or if it's the problem you should be solving right now. So design the system that they cannot design the systems that won't break under the real world pressure nowadays. So for example, from our experiences, we have seen, so by the way, I'm working on digital pathology software. It has like a web part and also some more backend part. So it works really well with the front-end stuff and the unit tests and Jira ticket wording, etc., all those stuff. But we are having almost no benefits in the backend side because the business logic is very complex there. There are some scientific things going on, maybe which you don't see on the open source code that's out there. So it has like very little experience out there. So I think like if you need a very fast code generator, then AI seems to be the right thing, but it's rarely the case in my experience nowadays.
So let me restate something that I picked up. You basically said the fundamental skill to have is being able to design systems, and that's always been the case. But a few years ago, one person could design the system and then 3 people could just go on and develop as per the specs. Now that code is being generated by AI, the designing part is becoming even more important, because you don't need the 3 developers just churning out code anymore. You just design, and 80% is done by LLM now. I guess that's a very valid point. Anyone else? Anything else on this topic? I'm just conscious of time, so we'll probably stop very soon and leave some time for Q&A.
Yeah. So if you think about the classic build, measure, learn loop, at some point the bottleneck becomes not the internal team's ability to able to build and deploy it, but how fast your end customers or users are willing to interact and adopt with that. So I'm quite interested in if or when a company reaches that point, then what? You get into synthetic users to try and speed back your feedback loop, or is there like a natural limit to how optimized you can be?
That's interesting. When the barrier becomes your customers' feedback loop? How do you push them to kind of give feedback faster and accelerate that as well? Okay, just conscious of time. Barry, Chelsea, I'm looking at you. I've got 4 more slides, but we're not going to cover them today, so we may have to run another session if people enjoy this one. But I want to leave the last 10 minutes for pure Q&A on, anything that we touched on today. So if you have any question, any point, anything you want to raise now, let's do it now. Feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat. I'm going to try and catch up with the chat in the meantime. Dennis, you have your hand up. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, so really simple question for you guys who runs the teams or founders of the companies. Do you feel like the overall opinion on using language models is like a shame? This also relevant to developers. I feel like it's almost an idea in the air that if you are using an LM in your work, you are not a proper developer. Why can't you do it yourself?
You're not good
type of
enough.
thing. Yeah, sort of thing.
I've noticed this is probably just partially related, but during interviews, usually the use of AI is discouraged. And yes, I can see some reasons for that. But at the same time, realistically today, you will not code 100% of your platform or your product by hand, right? So who else has seen what Dennis has just described? Almost like a bit of a shame in, oh, you're using AI and therefore you're cheating.
I would happily use fuck leak code if anyone asked me to write code in an interview from now on. And if you haven't seen fuck leak code, you should really go and look at it, because I would be very surprised if your interview process is not defeated by fuck leak code.
Would you like to drop a link in the chat, Adam?
I don't have. They've.
Is it safe for work?
The domain name is safe for work. They've given it some friendly branding I can't remember. But if you search for fuck leak code, you'll get the front page, which is fuck leak code. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Chris.
There you go. Thanks, Chris.
He's on it. But they've got like a whole public facing thing, and they're making a vast amount of money now from all the people paying to not bother doing coding interviews. Which is why they have another. There you go, interview coder. That's the one. Thanks, George.
I suspect that AI will eventually just become run of the mill. People will just use it. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when using an IDE was considered cheating. So, tools evolve. It's just a tool, really, at the end of the day.
Is anyone still not using an IDE out of curiosity?
Oh yeah, I do it on the white wall here. All the code on the wall.
Chris, did you just thumbs up?
Can I actually call VS Code an IDE? I mean, I don't think cursor really counts. It's so backwards.
That's a whole
I was a Vim and Emacs guy. Vim's not really an IDE; it's more of a collection of macros. But it's
Well, I remember when Emacs was seen as cheating. You see, Vi was the way to go.
If VS Code is an IDE, then Vim and Emacs definitely are IDEs as well.
Let's not get into that. So, just conscious of time, we have basically just 5 minutes left. So that was actually half of my presentation. We just went off the cuff. So I guess the question for you guys is, number one, did you find this useful? And number two, would you like to see another similar? Did you like the format, and would you like to see another similar session potentially in the future?
Yeah.
Feel free to drop a message in the chat or just unmute yourself and let me know what you think.
I would love to see a talk like this specifically for non-tech members of the team.
That's going to be difficult. I wanted to try and do that today, but we all know how it went. But we can do that. Yeah, again, we can just for context very quickly. This is what I have left in my presentation. Not strictly technical, but yeah, interview process, that's something I'd like to talk about because this is really changing. Again, more than happy to run another session and carry on the conversation. But in the meantime, let's keep talking. If you enjoy the topic, if you enjoy the conversation, it's not really a presentation, it was more of an open discussion. Feel free to reach out to me. This is my LinkedIn, and potentially if there's interest, we'll, you know, I will be more than happy to run another one. Okay, so we are pretty much at the end. So thank you all very much for joining.